Welcome to the Tailored Life podcast, where we discuss practical science and not so common sense to live a life more extraordinary. So, let's get started. Here are your co-hosts, who are also partners in life and business, Luke and Rachel. We've been speaking a lot about the fundamentals of health and well-being, and today is really no different because there are some elements that we haven't quite covered yet, at least to build into sort of a more compartmentalized or bucket-based category set that people can use to start really observing the decisions that they're making in their life and making some long-term changes. And so before we start, or to prompt the process of starting, I want to talk about the phone calls that we get at Tailored Health Clinic and how we have learnt to assess whether or not people are really ready to make the change, or for the most part, many are not, which means we often turn away gently, probably more than we do accept, because at the end of the day, they have to be in a place and be prepared to make the types of changes that are required to get to where they want to go. And oftentimes we get people coming to us with issues like hormones or gut health, or actually more predominantly weight gain. And a lot of them have gained weight over the lockdown period, and then they haven't been able to shift it since then. They're often reaching for comfort food. They're often very tired. They're often just trying to get through the day out of a degree of comfort. I'm eating for comfort. I'm eating for just getting that feeling of security and safety and sense of control in many cases. And so I'd love to talk to you or get you to share how those phone conversations have often gone. So they email us or they'll do a Find My Fit quiz, and we'll follow up with them, or we might do a 20-minute phone consult. How do those conversations usually go for you on the phone? And I'd love to contrast with how mine go and how aligned they are to our friends and family conversations.
Yeah. When having these conversations, it's always interesting because the motivation is just real high for them. They've had a moment which has triggered their motivation, which is a beautiful thing. But they often want to just overhaul their whole life, which can be a big challenge. And it's our role to make sure that we're keeping things, within reach. And because at Tailored, we're all about real health is slow health. And so we're often having to put the brakes on these people and slowing them down. So that's the initial kind of thing, is they're really just ready to go. And they're just wanting a kind of raw approach where let's get you on a diet, let's get you doing some high intensity training. And that's not what we do at Tailored. And if that is what they're looking for and they're not interested in looking beyond that, this is often where we do a soft hand-on to a service that will provide that for them. But we'll generally articulate to them why that we don't do that, because and the bottom line of it is we want long-term sustainable change, and you need to be ready to do the work to really promote that change. And it's not for everybody because it's hard. It's the uncomfortable work that nobody enjoys doing, but it's setting those fundamental foundations that are going to set you up for the rest of your life. So yeah, that's the pinning motivation or mood in which they approach us with, and they can become quite fixated on the symptoms, not so much the root cause. And we're often having to remind them that the weight that you've gained is a symptom of a deeper unresolved issue. And whether that is gut dysbiosis or like leaky gut or comfort eating, as you mentioned, stress response, like they're often all intertwined.
And they're all symptoms.
Yeah, they're all symptoms, yeah. So it's really trying to come back to what is the root cause, what has triggered all this? And oftentimes it is something that has happened in their life, or it is just an imbalance that's been created over time that they're unaware of, or it could be mold or some toxin load, or it could be a whole host of different things. And it's really our job is to put our detective hats on and assess what is the true driver of their issues, and how can we find those quick wins to really identify what's going on and make the biggest change as early as possible.
And it predominantly, exclusively actually starts with them. What is happening with them? I mean, you alluded to mold or other toxicity. That's environmental stresses, which of course can still be at play. But for the most part, the conversations that we have really starts about their own internal drivers, their own ability to observe what's going on, not only in their mind, in their body, but in their life and what choices they're making, which again all boils down to behaviour and habit. So what habits have they gotten into? What sort of subroutines or programs do they have running, either it be consciously or subconsciously, to be able to either support or erode what they're trying to achieve in their lives?
Yeah, and this is the crazy thing. Like 95% of what we do on a daily basis is unconscious. So these are all autonomous behaviors or behaviors that are triggered by the environment. So it's like a response to the environment that you're in. Like, for example, driving the car. So when you drive to work in the morning, like how often have you just ended up being at work and not realizing how you got there? Because you've done that drive so many times, it's just ingrained, it's autonomous. The habits have stacked upon each other where you no longer need to think because you've just repeated that cycle so many times. And it's these grooves that we create in our lives that just deeply ingrain us into these habitual patterns that no longer needs our conscious mind. And our bodies and minds, or just as humans, we are adapting creatures and we adapt to the behaviors we do repetitively. So you are a makeup of your behaviors. So if you are overweight, if you are sick, if you have injuries, it's a makeup of your behaviors.
And the irony, we never like to compare ourselves to other animals, mammals, because surely as higher in the food chain, higher in sentience, we should be far more advanced than these. But this is no more than Pavlov's dog. At the end of the day, Pavlov would ring the little bell and then the dogs would eventually associate that with eating, therefore their whole physiology would change and start to salivate in expectation to get fed. Humans are no different, which is, again, a scary thing to admit, but the reality is our crocodile brain, we are built in many cases to try to minimize the amount of energy or work required to do things. And the more our bodies and minds can create these grooves, these autonomous processes, these routines that just play or run at a trigger, the less energy we consume. And from a conservation perspective, it's within our best interest to try to routine or program things as best as we can so we can pay attention to things that really matter.
Yeah, it's automate. Just like you would automate a business to streamline the things and make things a lot more efficient. The same thing for your bodies and your mind. Like that's how we function. We're trying to find that efficiency, as you talked about. So it's really trying to get people to just be, like as we alluded to in many of our podcasts already, is observe what is going on. What are these behaviors and how can I disrupt them? And we're going to go into a lot more of that, in particular in future episodes when we start going to habits and habit stacking and understanding how to really break and reform healthy habits. Break bad habits and reform good habits.
Yes. And so getting back to the phone calls. So I want to share what often happens during those phone calls. And one particular person, this woman and her sister have an amazing life around being artists. They're singers, songwriters, I believe, and they're often out really late at night doing the thing that they love, which is being in a band, entertaining a group of people and doing what just lights them up. But they're often out until really late at night. They'll often come home, they might talk, stay up, have a drink of wine. And it's a whole process that is part of this sort of joyous existence that actually fills their bucket. But then they go to work in the morning, and so they have this kind of tension between what they love doing and what's actually creating a degree of unrest for them, because they're starting to have issues with, again, weight management. They're getting a lot of inflammation. They feel sick all the time. One of them, they're starting to feel that their throat, their singing voice is being affected negatively. And so there's a whole barrage of issues that are starting to amount to this particular situation. So they came to us looking for, okay, what's going on? What sort of diagnostic process can I figure out to assess why my body is behaving this way? And all I did was take them back to first principles. Walk me through your day. And in that process of just walking through the day, I literally said, tell me what you're doing. What time are you getting up? And then hour by hour, I got them to chunk out what's actually happening. And when I broke down not only how much time they leave to sleep, but equally how much they're burning the candle at both ends, Their body's just not made to do that for long periods of time. Yes, you can do that for short periods, but certainly not for years and years. And I said to her really frankly, I said, you could spend thousands of dollars on diagnostics, which are going to be super powerful. If you're doing genetics, that information will last you a lifetime. If you do gut health or organic acids to see what your body is actually, how your body's functioning with the exhaust, that gives you a good time point of, okay, yes, it's validating how you're feeling. Something is going wrong. There is something amiss in the workings or the raw materials of your body and how it functions. But at the end of the day, if you're not willing to make lifestyle changes, then it's just going to be an expensive paperweight on your desk. You're still going to be experiencing the same issues. You're still going to be, on a sort of downward spiral. And until you start to critically assess what needs to change to get your just fundamentals right, anything we layer upon that is really not going to serve them.
Yeah, and, absolutely. And I think people, again, it comes to that high motivation that is willing to do everything, but then forgetting that the real fundamentals that they could shift first and foremost, right? And yeah, sleep, as we know, and as we've discussed, is such a critical component of that. But there's also there's that trade-off as well of understanding where they can have that late night and still enjoy that singing, but making sure that 80% of the time they're getting that good restorative sleep, right? But if they're not willing to even meet there, yeah, it's pointless. You need to have those fundamentals sorted. So to go into one that I've had and often have, to be honest. So at Tailored, we see quite a few A-type personalities, those hard chargers, that just high performers that want to be good at what they do and in all aspects of life. And when you're trying to be good at all aspects of life at a high level, something's got to fall. And oftentimes it is at the compromise of their body or mind, or most of the time both, where they will be just driving themselves into the ground. So for example, one client approached me and they're a Ironman triathlete. They're quite high up in the kind of executive space, and they got 2 kids. So that's a lot going on. And as somebody that used to do Ironman and without kids at that point in time, stacking kids on top of that, stacking an executive role on top of that, that's a lot to take on. So it was for this person, was understanding the drivers around why in each of these areas. And oftentimes you find that they're trying to escape. So for this person, it was just escaping into this high level of performance, but not actually addressing the things that they needed to address. And yeah, it's just taking that step back to actually observe, why are they just so driven? Why are they trying to get to this place? And how can we modify or reduce the stresses on their life to help them be healthier? Because they were training 30 hours a week, but still putting on weight. They were just mentally fatigued and exhausted 24/7. And good night's sleep didn't really touch the sides. Didn't help that they were waking up at 5 a.m. to go to swim squad. And yeah, they're just crashing. So they're having a lot of stimulants to keep them going, caffeine throughout the day, which again was impacting the sleep at the end of the day as well. This whole cascade of just ways in which they were propping themselves up, but at the end of the day, they were just eroding themselves.
And I think getting back to things like the essential intent, so why are they doing that? But also getting mindful of the family environment and how that's either supporting or eroding that why. Because from there you can start to break down the various sort of categories of their life. We call it the tailored life wheel. We'll put it in the show notes with a worksheet that you can fill out. But when you want to start exploring what parts of your life are either not being fulfilled in a way that's keeping you satisfied or indicating an area where you're trying to escape from, that can be a really powerful way to subcategorize the sort of mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, movement part, which of course is a part of your 4-pillar health philosophy, which we'll get into very shortly, but also start to help ask the questions of yourself, like, why is this bucket so empty? When in my life has this bucket felt full, and how is it being different to right now? But for that particular client, there's so many things I want to unpack. But again, it's not just about them, it's about their environment that's becoming conducive to reading into that person's why. Also the relationship with their spouse. So oftentimes, to be frank, the relationship with the spouse is one of the things that also goes in conjunction to their mind and body. And to be fair, I would say that the relationship with their spouse is probably even in a worse state, even more so than their mind and body, because that only exacerbates the mind-body axis, because when your relationships aren't right, you start to absorb, you start to swallow a lot of those, we call it dust in the relationship, the things that just are unsettled or things that have fallen.
It's just building up.
Building up
small
over
things,
time.
just real small things that just build up over time.
Niggles and relationship arguments that haven't been resolved, traumas, triggers, whatever that might be happening, as well as with the kids. But before we get more into the depth of breaking those things down, I want to return back to the 4-pillar health philosophy. Now, we spoke about that at length in the first episode, where during your kind of unbecoming and therefore reforming or recrystallization of your health pathway, that you assessed that there were 4 key categories that from a observation and a reflection perspective was really powerful in assessing whole being and in holistic health. So can you articulate those 4 again, and then any other sort of thoughts around why that order?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, the order is extremely important, and there was a lot of iteration and refining of this over the decade plus in the creation of this. So yeah, mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, and movement in that order. So it is extremely important. As we mentioned in the start of this podcast, so many people come in looking to get on a diet or to run away from their problems, because these are the ways in which we're told in society we need to lose weight, is through nutrition and movement. So I have intentionally made sure they're not the foundation, because when you start there, you will get success to some extent if you do these things, but it's going to be short-term success because you haven't created the fundamental structure, that foundation that really sets upon a healthy human being for a long-term sustainable change.
And a platform for actual habit change. Yeah. If you're looking at the subroutines of the programs that run it automatically, that starts in the mind and it starts in the lifestyle and the habits and those behaviours that are within those 2 constructs.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, 95% of our behaviours are unconscious. And so again, that is such a significant component of our life that we only have 5% in a day that is conscious behaviour. Yes, we can shift that dial, like we can, but for the most part, we're just trying to create these structures. Sorry, so obviously scratch this.
You're trying to unwind all this unconscious behaviour without even realising what you're doing?
Yeah. I was going to say we're trying to automate as much as possible.
You mean generally, or as a part of a healthy environment you're trying to automate as much as possible, because that requires an unwinding of the old behaviours?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we need... no years. We need to be unwinding all these behaviours, these habitual patterns, these autonomous behaviours that are just so deeply ingrained into our patterning of the way in which we lead our life. And obviously first, before we unwind them, we need to observe them. So we've talked a lot about being the observer, trying to create some space between the action and the response.
Or the trigger and
trigger and the response, sorry. And really just figuring out what is healthy, what is not, what is serving you, what is not. And when we start to really do that, we can become to live a life by design, a life that serves us, and yeah, we just thrive.
And I want to get back to the other end of the 4-pillar, just to show an extreme. In the movement side, and I can reflect upon this directly myself, but also a number of my executive clients, not even executive clients, but people who are that type A personality or people that throw themselves into movement. And oftentimes throwing themselves into movement is a coping mechanism, which again is a symptom of a fundamental issue which again is a healthy response if you can acknowledge that there's some event or some activity that you do in your life is really stressful, and the way you cope is to try to get some exercise, which is again a beautiful way to manage stress. But sometimes when you throw yourself into the movement side or restrict your eating or whatever it might be at that back end of the 4 health pillar, it's, again, looking at a symptom-based coping mechanism where it's, okay, what am I trying to run from? What am I trying to distract myself from? What am I trying to punish myself
Yeah, but also a lot of times it's not punishment, it's what they believe to be right as well. Society says you need to eat less and of the right things and not treat yourself, be really restricted, and you need to train really hard. You need to burn more calories than you eat. So there's a lot of where they're not necessarily running away from things, but they think that doing what is right without setting out the fundamental foundations. And I also want to be clear, we're not saying not to do the other behaviors. You're always doing mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, movement. That's life. There's just a hierarchical structure around where we put our focus. So if you don't have your mindset sorted, we're not going to focus on the lifestyle, the nutrition, and the movement very much at all. We're going to focus on really crafting that powerful growth, infinite mindset. And then we can build upon that. Or it might be you've got your mindset, your lifestyle, and nutrition sorted, but it's that movement is that last squeaky part. So we're not going to focus too much on the first three. We'll make sure we'll refine and improve them, but the priority structure for you will be movement. So it's just trying to meet people where they're at and then guiding them along that hierarchical structure and making sure that we're still doing everything, but the priority structure is based around what is most important to that individual at that point in time.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And I think mindset starts from where we talked about in the last episode around almost check-in, but we've knitted throughout even the last several episodes, is that observation of trigger and response. So that's the fundamentals. We don't need to go into too much detail on that because, again, we probably went through it quite extensively in the last episode. But when it comes to the trigger response, we invite you to think about what is your why that helps you make decisions overall with any trigger to then create a new response. And I like that there's the Power of Habit book, which Charles Duhigg, yeah, which when I first read that, I was just like, that makes so much sense, but it's so hard to do in practice, surprisingly enough. And I think that comes down to your why too, because if you don't understand why you want to make better decisions, why you want to eat better, why you want to have a lifestyle that feels more conducive or aligned to your values, or why you want to move your body, it makes it really hard to actually change those habitual patterns or to create that wedge in between trigger and response around how you see all these different type of pillars or activities in your life. And when I think about the why, have you done extensive work in your why or essential intent? And if so, what has that looked like? How much has that been a contributor to the coaching that you do at Tailored as well? And what kind of advice would you give someone about that?
Yeah, so the why is the fundamental thing of everything, right? Like you need to spend some time on this and define this if you do not have it. And the common issue I see with people defining their why, they define it as more of a goal. So it's more time-bound. It is a target that is achievable, which a why is something that there's no time to it. It's a working project. It is a direction more than anything.
The music you're dancing to,
it's
right?
The music you're dancing to, yeah. It is the way in which you want to imbue and live your life. And more of an intention, less of a target. Because the issue with having a goal or a target is once you achieve that target, you're lost. Then what? Then you have to come another one and another one. And it's not really creating that continuity that brings you back to that essential intent around how you want to live your life. So it is very much a way of living life.
And the book Essentialism has been such a powerful book for me particularly, because that really underpins or talks about what that undercurrent music, that score. If you think about your life as a movie and you think about the score that plays at various chapters, there's always going to be some undercurrent tone to what you're doing within your life to achieve this fulfilling journey, which is where you fall in love with the process of living, which you hear about any kind of goal is to enjoy the process, because like you mentioned, as soon as you hit that goal, you're often left, oh my gosh, now I've achieved it, what's next? And if you can try to find that undercurrent why on the different categories of life too. So often people think, oh, I've got to figure out just one why. But when we look at our essential intent, we actually have categories related to our relationships, related to our physical well-being, related to our finances. And so that it gives us a much better totem pole or a yardstick to say, okay, when we do these things to create wealth, then we're doing it so we become financially free and can give back to invest in others or things that we think are going to lift the entire game for the whole world or whatever it might be. And so at the end of the day, categorizing those things in a way that means you've got almost like a one-liner statement on each of those things about why you're doing these things can be a really powerful tool.
And a good way to think about it is that generally I believe kind of statements. I believe that this is how it should be. And so when you are writing it, it's a good way to think about it. It's less of a fact, it's more of a belief structure that you believe as an individual. And yeah, it's not something you should ever copy from anybody else. It has to truly come from you. And it will be a working document because you're going to evolve and change over time and you'll figure out better language but I do want to point out that you don't want to fixate too much on the language. Just say it how you believe it and what resonates with you. So don't focus on making it all pretty and like an essential intent you're going to put on your website or whatever it is, because this is a personal why that should go across life, business, everything. There should be one underpinning why that underpins the finance, the relationships, but then you can create little whys around that as well. But there has to be one essential intent that all interrelates because it shouldn't change too much. And that kind of also comes back to where I was saying, where it's not a goal, it's not a target. This is where we need to have an infinite mindset, not a finite mindset. Because too often in society, we're living in a very finite game. And that's when there's a win-loss. But an infinite game, there is no win-loss. It is a continuous game that never finishes. And this is where you see those that succeed and those that succeed long-term versus those that fall short over and over again. The ones that fall short over and over again are just having this finite mindset. It could be a perfect example of somebody is continually on the diet loop. That's a finite mindset because they feel like a diet is going to be the solution to their problem. And they see this goal that I'm going to lose 10 kgs. Once I lose that 10 kgs, I'm good. And then they get that 10 kg point, then they start reintroducing all these foods that they've just removed from their body and put the body in quite a significant amount of stress. So then their body's, I got the food again.
Dopamine hits, yes.
Yeah, I'm in a survival state. I'm going to restore this because I've been in such a calorie deficit for the last 2 months, whatever it is. I lost 10 kgs, 2 months. I just need to absorb this, and it just holds on to it. And then this is where we get into that yo-yo dieting route because they lose the weight, they put the weight back on. And generally when they put the weight on, they put more weight on. And then they go back again to another diet, and because that wasn't the right diet, so now I need to go, instead of paleo, I need to go keto, and instead of keto, I need to go vegan or whatever it is.
Latest and greatest.
What's the latest and greatest? So it's really about shifting your mindset around behaviors that have a goal, but actually trying to focus on it from an infinite mindset. What is going to serve you for the rest of your life? How are you going to live the rest of your life? What game are you playing?
Yeah, it's funny how much over the last, I would say, 2 years, the word diet really triggers me. And I know diet can be used in a variety of phrases or mechanisms. How you eat is your diet. Whether or not you're animal-based or vegan or whatever, it's the categories you type of eat. Diet also means a more restrictive kind of like eating style. And so it's funny how often that word is used in conversations of people who come to us around, I'm just looking for a diet, I want to go on a diet. Also in some prior relationships, how much they're like, oh, I'm on a diet now, I'm not eating. So, and it really bugs me because you're right. Every time those people that I know that are on these cyclical diets, they've just over time consistently gained more and more weight. And you'd think that after the 10th or 20th year of trying to go on a diet, they'd be like, okay, something's broken here. Maybe something else is going on that is not just about food. Because the common denominator out of all of this is them. It's not the food they're eating, it's not the exercise they're doing, because those things change, because oftentimes they are changing what they're doing. But the common denominator is usually their mind, how they're thinking, and the lifestyle that they're not changing for that finite game.
They change it for a short period of time, but it's not sustainable enough, because motivation's going to dwindle. Those first month, maybe, you can be really strong and really sturdy and stick to that I suppose, routine that they've created or restriction they've created. But as you go to month 2, month 3, month 4, things fall to the wayside. And then, I missed a day. What's another day?
I screwed it up today. I'll just, might as well.
Or I hit my 10 kg target. I deserve this.
Yes.
I can have this again. And then all of a sudden that just comes back into their life, because we are a makeup of our behaviours. If you're putting on weight, there's a reason.
Yeah, and we're also prejudiced towards comfort. So, not only is a fundamental code of ours to avoid pain, but it's also to seek pleasure. Food, to be quite frank, food's one of my favourite things in the world.
Oh, love it.
It is delicious. And the way we manage our food and enjoying that is really balanced. Like we allow ourselves a chocolate brownie that your mum cooks every Sunday. We give ourselves permission to say, this is the life we want to live. We want to be able to lead a life in which we can enjoy things when we want to, but it's all in moderation. And so it's fascinating to reflect upon the word diet and how this sort of diet industry is so well funded.
Oh yeah.
To be frank, we would probably be very wealthy if what we did is we took these people's motivation, we took the desire to make them feel empowered with a short-term diet, and we ran these programs short-term to get people on this wheel and to take advantage of this emotional cycle. But we don't, because we fundamentally know that's not the way to live long-term.
But we'll get them success though, so we look really good. And it's their fault that they've fallen off the wagon, because it's not our fault.
Yeah.
That's the issue that I have.
The discomfort I experience is because our programs are often quite long, so we're looking at 3 to 6 months. And because the industry outside of us has primed them for fast, quick results, they get frustrated with how slow we are. And it's actually, what did we learn last week? Or what have we learned in the last 2 weeks? And we list out what they've learned or what they've been looking at, and they're like, oh yeah, actually, you're so right. I have a better understanding of my observation of what wine is in my life, what relationship wine is to me, and how it knits into my current lifestyle. And even just spending those 2 weeks writing down on our nourishment journal, we don't just have what it is and what time, we have what it is, what time, how are you feeling, what was going on around you, were you having any conversation with anybody, any relationship involvement at that point. And so we get people to observe, what does this meal, what does this particular food mean to you in your life? And that feels too slow. Like 2 weeks of doing that feels ridiculously slow, but without understanding, okay, when do I reach for wine? I reach for wine at the end of a long day. I usually have 2 glasses if it's been an exceptionally long day. I usually do this with my partner. We usually share outside on the patio with our glasses of wine and can have these condolences with each other around how crappy the day was and how bad the boss is and the challenges. And maybe just before we have dinner, we might have a snack on cheese. And that's the way that we connect. It's wonderful. You've identified how a relationship is knitted into your lifestyle, how you connect with your spouse, how you wind down for the day, how you provide comfort. Food, in that case, and wine is serving you in a way that's making you feel better. And that needs to be at least acknowledged.
Yeah, and I think the key thing that you've identified through that is the actual habit loop. It's the trigger that creates the response and the reward, right? Once we understand that loop, we can really take that step back to, is it serving? Is it not serving? What areas can we refine that to make sure it is actually serving us in a holistic way? It's not just that connection, but it's a healthy, with the connection with a healthy response to your body. It's actually nourishing your body at the same time. So there's many ways in which you can interrupt that cycle to figure out what works with inside that individual's case. And that's this first 2 weeks is why we get people to observe, is because we don't know how they live their life. Everyone lives their life so differently.
And 95% on autonomy.
Yeah.
They don't even know how they live their life, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's why we need to ask these things, and this is why we need to get uncomfortable and observe our lives and be bio-curious. What is actually happening? And trying to get in tune with the body. I can continuously And we'll talk about this more when we come to movement specifically, but inside the hub, when it comes to movement and nutrition, to be honest, and to obviously the lifestyle, which we've talked a lot about already, is just getting people understanding what their body is telling them. And so many people will just move and not feel what their body's doing. It's like they can't identify that the hips are out to the left, or their knees caving in, or there's pain there. What kind of pain is that? Is it sharp, dull, achy? That doesn't, my body doesn't feel good. What doesn't feel good? Give me more understanding of what is actually going on with their body. Or when you eat that food, what is the response you get? For me, if I have gluten, I notice a distended belly. I notice my inflammation starting to build up and a lot more aches and pains coming.
How do you identify inflammation for you? What does that show up as?
It shows up as, I notice inflammation even more so with dairy. So I'll go with dairy for that analogy. So dairy for me, I will notice my sinuses kicking in. I will notice...
Is there pressure? Does it feel congested? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so congested, my throat closes up at the same time. So swallowing becomes really challenging, and very mucousy at the same time. And then I notice that, my aches and pains really kick in, and it's really unpleasant. And my energy, just set. So if I go to a restaurant and I can identify it pretty quickly between whether it's gluten or dairy, I can identify my personal response to those foods and tell you what I've eaten. And I will know that, okay, I've had dairy, even though I didn't realize I was eating any dairy. So there's no psychological component that I was having dairy. I would have something and have that response and know straight away.
And so what bubbles up to me is my mom. Shout out to my mom. She's amazing. But so we've just had her genetics. We just did her clinical genetic analysis and walked her through how to understand her body a bit more. And so she's feeling incredibly empowered and can't stop yarning about this. But what I love, she's had these subroutines going for decades. But one of her clinical genetic predispositions is issues with gluten. There's a gluten celiac sensitivity. That doesn't mean that's what's going on, but it wasn't until she started to remove gluten for at least a couple of weeks that she realized that her arthritis, she was like, I don't feel as much pain in my fingers anymore. Could that be because of what I'm doing?
And she was better in tennis too, right?
She was better in tennis. She had more energy. She was just like, I feel better. I feel more alert. My game of tennis was way better. Obviously, she wasn't feeling the pain in her joints as much as she was. And she's like, is that because of me removing gluten? It's just like, there's a good reason. There's a good possibility that has been contributing to your inflammation. But until you become curious, and you actually just eliminate for whether it be a couple of weeks all the way maybe up to 3 months, you have no clue that you're running suboptimal in the first place.
Yep.
And so until you have that opportunity to remove and reflect and check in on your body in a way that's actually, hey, just removing this one food, do I feel any better? That's the only way to actually assess whether or not there's something going on with your body's reactivity to that food.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we're going through this, we're jumping between mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, movement, because this is what happens, right? Like, life's messy. There is no structured order to it, and often in these sessions, we are jumping between the two, but through doing that, we're trying to assess what is the priority structure, where does it lie for this individual, and we always regress before we progress. And that is a really important part of everything we do at Tailored, is really taking that step back before we go shooting into changing a lot of things. So oftentimes you'll see that mindset and lifestyle, which we've talked the majority about today so far, they're quite synonymous. They're very intertwined and mixed together. And they need to be treated much like that too, because it is our mindset that creates our behaviors, but our behaviors that creates our mindset. So it's like this very entangled interplay between the two that we just need to be conscious of, and really set our environment up and our lifestyle up that it just makes us make the right choices. It's really important that you view the lens of they are individual, but they are also closely intertwined. And obviously that kind of leads into the mindset and lifestyle intertwines into all of them after that. They build upon each other. So once you got the mindset and lifestyle sorted, obviously that has a big significant impact for nutrition and movement, because if you don't eat at a regular time or move at a regular time, you're making yourself really challenging decisions because you're making yourself have to consciously come up with these decisions over and over again. But if we can automate those behaviors in a healthy, by design, conscious way, you're setting yourself up for success without having to think about it. That's a life by design that is easy.
Yeah.
So
perfect example of this is our ice bath routine in the morning. So every morning, it's a non-negotiable, we have our ice bath. If we're not at home and we have our beautiful ice bath, Odin, thank goodness for them, on our patio, then it would be a cold shower, or it would be jumping in an ocean, or whatever it might be. So for us, we've found that is a force multiplier in our mood, our energy, how we feel throughout the day. And the research is irrefutable. There are so many benefits for having that cold immersion or exposure in the morning. And it's taken us 3 weeks. We looked at the date, didn't we?
Yep.
It's taken us 3 weeks, and we are just starting to get to the point where this is an automated routine. Yes, there's still that crocodile brain saying, no, don't get in a cold bath. But I don't know about you, but I'm definitely finding there's more of a 95% autonomous routine that I just get in.
Yep.
And that narrative, that little voice that says you're absolutely mad, what are you doing, is nearly non-existent.
Yeah.
Now, that does not mean that it's not going to come back when it's exceptionally cold outside or if I'm really not feeling it, but I would say now, after 3 weeks of doing this every morning, it's finally quietening that no, what are you doing? And it's that it's just amazing, that prefrontal cortex saying shh to the amygdala and the emotional and the crocodile brain of why the heck am I doing this? And so for us, that's been a 3-week process, but most people don't even get to 3 weeks of any kind of habit change.
Yeah, and then this is why you just, you pick that one thing, right? And you just lock that in. So for us, we had a very well-established morning routine as it was. For me, I was already having a cold shower in the mornings, so it wasn't too much more to stack on an ice bath on top of that. It means I actually don't have to worry about the cold shower anymore, so I'm actually removing thing and adding something, so it's much of a muchness for me. We already have our morning workout. We already have... See, this is the thing. When every time people ask me about the morning routine, I'm like... Because we have a very extensive morning routine.
It's a 95%. That's because it's all automated.
Because we've built that one thing on since we've been together. We've got a very well-established morning routine, which we did film it, and it is on our Instagram from a while back. But it's evolved since then, obviously. It's so funny when I try to reiterate what we do in our morning routine. Hopefully you can help me out with this, but... Yeah, we go through our process.
Well, it starts as a relationship too. It's morning cuddles.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Phones are on airplane mode. We're not looking at any messages, not getting any talks and stuff like that. And then it's conversation around our sleep data. So whatever wearables we're wearing at the time, we're comparing and contrasting our sleeps.
Might I add here that we always check in before we look at the data.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
I think that's what's key, is that from a relationship perspective, I think the first thing we always say to each other in the morning is, how did you sleep?
Yeah, subjectively.
Yeah, and so then it's, I just struggled, at the front end or the back end or whatever. Yeah. And then we go into what does our sleep data suggest?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And does it correlate to what we believe? And yeah, more oftentimes it does. And that's because we've been really curious and observing of that. Yeah, I feel like we should go through the morning routine. Yeah. So we start like that. We'll probably snuggle a little bit too much more, if anything, which, especially with the ice bath being part of the first part of the morning routine now, it's taking that hard thing first. So when snuggles are so nice, we don't really want to get up and go. But once we've done that, phones are on airplane mode, we're not worrying about any technology beyond that. Good thing with the Aura, this is one thing I like about the Aura of the Whoop, we can't actually compare our Whoop data early on because it needs Wi-Fi. So I can never see my Whoop data initially. So we can compare Aura data and other ones that use Bluetooth, but there's one thing that frustrates me.
And for those who are just checking in and don't know what you're talking about,
sleep
the
wearables.
Aura and the Whoop are two types of activity trackers, sleep wearable, biometric kind of trackers.
Yeah, two of the major competitors in the market, and we have a whole host of other things as well, but we won't go into those right now. Yeah, so then we get up, we go for an ice bath. We were doing our ice bath at the end of our workout, but we realized that we're actually inhibiting the strength gains or the hypertrophy gains, so the muscle mass and strength gains that we would get from that workout, which we're trying to achieve right now as we're building that base out. So we've shifted that from the end to the front end, which is hard. It's really hard, but it's really good because it gives our body a chance to warm up throughout the workout. So we go for the ice bath.
And we alternate. So if you were first in the ice bath one day, I'm first in the ice bath the next day.
Yeah, and so we do our ice bath, 2 to 3 minutes, get out, and then we're warming ourselves up to some extent, so doing some general movement.
Bounce on the tramp.
We bounce on the tramp, yeah, which we feel like we're crazy. All our neighbours must think we're just absolutely lost it and nuts, jumping around in our togs up on the tramp.
Yeah, doing spins and then gigging like little school children.
Yeah, as we're in like a cold autumn morning at the moment, and
they must think we are absolutely mad.
Wait until winter time.
I know.
And yeah, then as we start to warm up our body, I've just added in some basketball dribbling in there as well to help build upon that habit, because I'm really enjoying basketball at the moment and trying to craft my ball handling skills, and it's a great way to warm up the body. And then we get into our workout, and then we have a kind of contrasting workouts that we cycle throughout the week, and then after that, what do we do?
Well, so Wednesdays are our mobility and our jog day. So that's a bit different from our resistance training. So again, as you mentioned, throughout the week, there's different things. And so then once we've done our workout, we'll usually head upstairs. We often have done oil pulling. So that's one thing, just in all transparency, we need to bring back. I don't know why we stopped doing that.
I think we couldn't find the coconut oil for a while.
Yeah, it was out of stock or something like that. And so there's no excuse that we should really start that now, to be honest.
Yeah, let's bring that back.
So then we get into the showers. It's my morning routine with what I'm doing. I'm actually going to start face yoga soon. So
I haven't heard about this, isn't you? Okay.
Yeah, I found an app which looks quite good. And so you do your shower at that point. So the music goes on, something pretty upbeat. You get in the shower, you do all your stretching, you do your shower yoga.
Yep, shower
yoga, which is beautiful. I don't mind that at all. And I'm going to do my own face yoga, which again I'm looking forward to adding. And then it gets into brushing our teeth, and then we do balancing one leg when we're brushing our teeth.
Yeah, eyes closed.
Yeah.
Eyes closed for me at least.
I'm not eyes closed quite yet.
Yeah.
And then that's the morning stuff, like getting ready for the day. And then the rest of the day starts with our whether we're fasting or not fasting, school drop off and things like that as well. Yeah.
And that coffee, make sure that's stacked out at least an hour and a half after waking.
Morning pages, you do usually your journaling with day one, I think, in that morning period too.
Yeah, and there's also a whole bunch of things that are knitted in there that we haven't really spoken about, such as getting out into the sun exposure. That's where we're doing our workout outside, getting grounding, so on the ground. And then I extend that when I'm at my desk, so I have a light above me that kind of emits blue light into me to help wake me up further. Plus I also have a grounding mat that I sit on or stand on.
With Happy, we can use electromagnetic fields to be able to infer a different kind of chemical response to enhance caffeine, for example. So
there's a lot of things that are knitted in there in the background that we often forget about or do not allude to because, again, they're just so autonomous for us now. They just happen. And it's always, a nice thing to realise you live a really healthy life and you don't have to think about it.
Yeah, and again, it's not until we do stack them and talk about it. But I'm looking forward to stacking things further. But I love how we do all this intentionally and that we do it together. So I can only imagine what it's like for people who are the ones that are calling or email and they're like, something about my life doesn't feel right. And we often see it where there's one partner that is craving for change, whereas the other is often oblivious or isn't perturbed at all. It's certainly not enough to be motivated to change. And so this is where it becomes interesting around the lifestyle and what is there to support you and the structure you have to be able to make those good decisions.
Yeah, it's one thing I've always loved about you. You're always keen to just try new things and take on my routines, or we establish routines together, or I haven't been in too many relationships in the past that have been like that, where you're actually really keen to be better and do the right things. But I've got to be honest, with the ice bath, I figured it was just going to be me. I was like, she hates the cold, but you've just been a great proponent of it. You've just taken it on and you just saw the benefits in those first few days, dancing around and with so much energy and just absolutely buzzing. I think I've really appreciated watching you through that journey of just embracing the cold and just showing up every day. It's beautiful to see. And
it's beautiful to see you. I've noticed in you the changes, and so this is, for me, it's a vested interest, right? For one, I feel amazing afterwards, and because I've struggled with depression and anxiety in the past, and that's something I'd love to be able to talk more about her, and we see a lot of that as well, which is super sad. And oftentimes it's not only a biochemical issue, but it's a lifestyle issue, and they're often eroding their why or their undercurrent values to get there. But we'll talk about that another time. But I think for me to be able to feel so much better in my own head and in the broth of chemicals that are buzzing around up there. And I think they were saying that, I think Andrew Huberman was saying that an ice bath increases your dopamine by 3 or 4 fold, and then it keeps it high for up to 6 hours.
Yeah, so not just dopamine, catecholamines, so the whole collective of them. Yeah, I think 3 to 4 hours, maybe up to 6 hours, I think.
And no pharmaceutical drug can come close to that.
Yeah, well, without going below, right?
Dipping below norm.
Yeah, so because oftentimes when we boost catecholamines up to a significant level, that we drop down below baseline, and that's where the crash kicks in. So this is why it's just amazing, because it just sustains you throughout the day. You're like just charging, full of energy.
Yeah, and for those who don't know what catecholamines are, they're a group of basically thinking, processing, signalling chemicals in the brain. So whether it be to feel good, to feel motivated, to feel satisfied, there's a whole bunch of ways in which catecholamines work in the brain to keep it, balanced. And I've seen that in myself. Not that I was suffering from any kind of like mental health, depression or anxiety before the ice bath, but I've definitely noticed that for me, my mood is definitely lifted. And then of course, when your mood's lifted, it's the chicken or the egg situation, right? So if your mood is already in a better place, it's easier to think better and more positively. And then that influences the rest of your day. And so that's been a benefit for me. To see for you with your traumatic brain injury and your journey to navigate post-concussion, I've seen remarkable improvements, whether or not you're just pretending more extraordinarily than you do at the moment, but I've seen notable differences in your overall energy. You're able to talk with greater cognition and articulation. Your engagement with the kids is way more, you're in command of that emotion even when they're losing their minds or just being little gremlins. But I can see a change in you, which is actually really beautiful. And I would say, again, unless you're doing a master job of pretending, which I'd like to think you're not, that I'm flabbergasted by those improvements. And I think it's laying upon all the other work that you're doing, because the thing that I love about you is you are willing to show up and do the work. Like when you commit to something, when you say, this is not what I accept in my life, you are 100% committed to being better and to growing and to making that new path by design, because where you are is currently not acceptable to you. And so to see you make those changes and then to see you unfold so beautifully with the ice bath, that has been my huge motivator too. So thank you for acknowledging that you thought I would be like the knuckle dragger that came to the ice bath, but it's a purely selfish and as well as selfless motivation, to be honest.
Beautiful. I'm just glad we're ingraining this, because I think, significant change in yourself. And I think the key thing that we also love is the productivity too. It's one thing that we didn't mention beyond the mental health. Obviously, anything when you're feeling better, you're always going to be more productive as well. And yeah. But
this thing is so simple. Yes, we've invested in an ice bath because I know you've had your cold showers in the morning. I can't navigate cold showers. Showers are like my religious time to have a nice, warm, snuggly kind of environment to wind down for my day. So for me, that's a routine I wasn't willing to disrupt. But to have the ice bath now, or even to have a new habit of having a cold blast, just even for a couple of minutes in the back of the neck in the morning, that's such a simple thing that anybody could do, and to try for a couple of weeks, and makes huge inroads into the mindset, which then trickles down into the lifestyle. So getting back to the purpose of this podcast is to talk about practical ways, or giving you categories or methodologies to assess different parts of your life and what's either serving you or eroding some of your desires. These are just really great and free ways to start to change the chicken or the egg relationship.
Yeah, so I see the mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, movement, the 4 pillars as the kind of framework to view things upon. But obviously with mindset being number 1, that's where we unpin what is the why and the principles that you live your life by. Because from that why, we need to define what is an essential intent, or those principles in which you define your life by. And so for me, I define myself as a learner. So being an A-type personality, one of the easiest things to do is you have to be good at everything. And if you're not good at it, you're not going to do it. And that was me previously, and I've made sure I've refined that. And for me, it's just trying to be a ferocious learner. For example, like I mentioned in the morning routine, I've started basketball. I'm useless. Like,
I think your idea of useless is pretty unfair, but for you, I get that's your what is it, yardstick?
Yeah, I got standards, right? But I'm nowhere near where I want to be. Like, I'm fumbling my way through it, trying to figure out. I'm doing this scrimmage, this kind of public scrimmage thing where you just show up and you make up teams and you play. And these guys are really good. At least I think they're good. At least show me up. But I'm having to really just accept it is okay. I'm on the process of learning. I'm just going to get myself better each time. So just doing the work, picking out the things I can work on to get myself better week on, week out. And it's a massive shift to me, where I remember when I was living in Canada, for example, and I was living on the snow pretty much. I was snowboarding every day. I was getting like 100 days in the season. I was really good at snowboarding. And then wanted to try skiing one day. Tried skiing and I was useless. And I was like, screw this. I don't want to be on the bunny slopes. I want to be up on the black diamonds and doing the jumps and doing all the fun stuff and going off piste. But I should have stuck that out. And that frustrates me that I gave up so soon. So that's why I've had to shift my principles around not focusing on where I am, but also like where I can be. Just trying to live that life by design. And my life by design is that I want to be learning things. I don't want to always be learning things. As soon as I stop learning, I may as well die, right? Because if you're not growing and evolving, and
that's a belief structure for you.
It's a core belief. It's a core belief for me, yeah.
But that you've put in there intentionally. And I think if more people actually identified with the fact that they are a learner, and I've still got to learn this for myself, because I'm that kind of person you described, that if I'm not really good at it to start with, because I'm naturally quite good at things, then I often will say, you know what, it's not worth my time. Granted, it's probably because I don't care enough about that thing. And so when I think about the time that I have and the share of hours, I don't love it enough to be able to excel or try to spend more time there. But I think what's beautiful is how that type of attitude is at least providing a model for our son. So our 12-year-old, he's going on 13 in a couple of months. He definitely has that attitude of, I lost, I'm not interested in trying that again. And being a sore loser, which, you know what, I've been there, I'm often there, I'm being better at that, and taking your attitude of I'm here to learn and I'm here to grow, and also reflecting upon my kind of undercurrent why, which in my mind is, there's this beautiful quote, and I'm not going to get it right, but you'll get the idea of it, is that whether I believe in God or not, or the source, for me it's the source, but at the end of my life, I want to be able to meet the source and say I gave everything I had to make a difference because I existed. And I don't want to leave any untapped talent, untapped potential that was given to me by my source, by the creator, whatever you believe. I don't want to leave any of that on the table. I want to use it. I want to develop it. I want to be the best person, best version of me, so I can leave the world a better place because I exist and because I was given those skills, talents, gifts. And the fact that you are inspiring me around I'm a learner feeds into that why, which is really beautiful. And this is how having a friend or a partner, we're super fortunate to have found each other and to be so well aligned so quickly, because we are just fundamentally in sync regardless of our values. But whether you have a partner, whether you have a friend, a family member, that you have aligned values, find them and spend more time with them, because people don't grow in a silo or in a vacuum. And this is where lifestyle comes in. So if you're struggling with mindset and you really don't have a lifestyle or an environment or relationships that help you get out of that, then you need to either seek it or find it or make it. Like, whatever it is within your ecosystem, even if it means actually what do you love, and then seeking out some type of group that's doing, like you talking about the scrimmage, like, we can't compete with you in basketball. You're tall, you're lanky, you're fast, you're very good already. And so we don't challenge you. And so you sort out a scrimmage in an environment that helps you grow, because without that challenge, without that stress to force you to be better, you're just going to be sitting there feeling like you're in transition land or in limbo. And so that type of lifestyle decision is a decision. You can find those people, and if it's not in your current circle, find in a different circle.
And what I also love about basketball for me as well, and it's been a real mindset shift for me as well, is training is through play as much as possible. And I think there's one thing with now having kids, right? Like I try to play as much with them. So all my exercise, it's basketball, or it's playing soccer, or with the kids, or using that into another environment where I'm surfing or I'm snowboarding or I am playing basketball. I just get to do things that I love, and just for me, exercise comes so easy because I enjoy it. And I think too often people, force themselves into this structured routine where they need to go to the gym for an hour each day and just do stuff that they hate. Find things that you love to do. It doesn't need to be in a gym to get movement. We just need to be moving frequently and regularly, and just doing things that we enjoy is always going to make life so much easier.
And we're big proponents at the Hub. We've got a beautiful gym, semi-private gym facility. To be frank, that thing's like crickets in there, because for the most part, if they're not working one-on-one for a specific session, we're encouraging them to get out and go do something with their kids out in the environment, get sunshine, get fresh air, go for a trip, go for a hike, whatever it might be, because it's like life does not happen in this place. Life happens outside our facility, so go do that more.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we've planted seeds around mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, and movement right throughout. But again, this is a framework to start analysing your life and creating these buckets and understanding where you think your principal focus should be. Should it be on mindset, lifestyle, or nutrition, or movement? And then just remembering that we don't forget about the others. We're still doing the others, whether they are the ones you've already achieved or the ones you still need to achieve. You need to make sure you're just observing, and because life is always changing. Things are always moving and things will adjust, and you need to be able to be malleable and adjust with that. And live a life by design.
And this is where your why always comes in. So no matter what happens with the tectonic plates of life, there's always something that you come back to. And then we've alluded to some of our whys and things like that. Before we move on to the bucket exercise, which we've already alluded to, but we want to potentially double tap into, is another thing we literally talked about with the kids this weekend. There are two things which I thought was really powerful, and that lends something beautifully into the mindset lifestyle buckets. Firstly, they're super young, and so I asked them, what do you want to do more of? Is there something that you feel really passionate about or you want to learn more about? And they're like, well, not really, I don't really know. If you don't know, then where you find the known is the unknown. If you need to go into the unknown to find what you know and you like. And so you've got to try new things. And so without trying new things, you've got no way to figure out what you actually love. And so for those people who say, I don't know what I love, I don't know what gives me joy, I don't know what movement that lights me up or fills my bucket, it's okay. This is where you might write down a whole bunch of things in which in the past you've really enjoyed. Maybe you can't do those things right now, but what elements of those things that are in that enjoyment process did you love the most? Was it connecting with people on a deeper level? Was it actually using your body in a way that created something you're really proud of? Like perhaps you loved doing the volunteering gardening, where you actually were a part of a group doing something for a not-for-profit. And so you can start to tease out what you might like to do more of by reflecting on what you've loved in the past. And if you really can't think of anything that you loved in the past, what I've guided a couple of our clients on is go into Ticketek. Go into your local kind of Facebook group or search events on Facebook or whatever your platform of choice is that has some type of event listing. And just try one thing every month.
Yeah.
One new thing. Your only task right now is to look and book out one thing every month that's new.
For example, if you're into crypto, it's going to a crypto meetup.
Yep.
Like those simple things are just finding your community in which they have a similar kind of understanding, knowledge set, and curiosity and passion, is just going to light you up. Like you get to talk how you always want to talk, but no one around you knows how to talk that conversation. So just by surrounding yourself with those people, those like-minded people, is going to really just light you up.
Yeah. And the second thing that we talked about with the kids in the weekend, which I will bow down to you, which I thought was just brilliant. It was a brilliant dad moment. As I mentioned to you, you were dad of the day yesterday, because our kids kept fighting. Like they were siblings, right? They fight. But what you raised, which was, I wish I'd recorded the conversation, because it just, to me, it's just going to sit in there as one of my best moments for you as a dad so far. There's going to be plenty more. Is you said to our son, what do you want in a sister? What would be an ideal relationship with your sister? And he said what he said. Alyssa was there, so his sister was there. And so you helped him curate the language around that, around, okay, you want a friend to play with, or someone who shares your interests in certain activities, who wants to play, who wants to engage, who wants to get out and do things. And there was a conversation piece around, okay, you can't just want things for someone else to always want to do the thing that you want to do, and so there has to be some shared
It was
kind
a
of
we
interest.
instead of an I kind of conversation,
Yeah, so we won't go into the minutiae there. And then you did the same thing with our daughter, is what do you want in a big brother? And she talked about, I want my big brother to protect me. I want to feel safe with him. And so having that simple conversation made it very clear to Jacob, our son, that when I bully my sister, she doesn't feel safe. And then equally when Alyssa, our daughter, says no so quickly and offensively to our son when he's want to go play on the tramp, and she's no, because she's already angry at him or something, that to him that feels so much more hurtful, because he just wants to play, that perhaps instead she comes back and she says, no, but I would love to play this with you if you're open to it. And very quickly it became an aha moment between the two, again, around lifestyle and who you have relationships with, is that relationships don't automatically happen. Sometimes with some people you just meet and you're just alone, you're like, wow, where have you been my entire life? But that's not largely what happens.
But even with those as well, relationships grow and evolve.
Yeah,
and you need to be able to adapt with it and understand why things are happening. So it's easy in the honeymoon phase, for example, things just to get washed away because you're just in this heightened emotional state where you're like, yeah, I found my person. Whether that is a relationship, like a loving relationship, or just a friend, I found somebody that I really connect with. You're in the heightened state. And once that kind of goes over time, if you don't have that language set or that understanding or that communication pathway to what is driving each of you, you get disconnected and you're going to create friction.
And so the thing that happened at night time, so we always have a chat with each kid and we alternate at the end of the day and when they're going to bed. And so it was actually beautiful to be able to inquire in how that conversation landed in their little minds. And my daughter was like, I felt really uncomfortable saying what I wanted. And I was like, why do you think that was? And I was able to unpack that with her. And I ended up just saying, look, with any relationship, you're two separate people. You're not mind readers. You have no clue what the other person wants unless you literally ask. And then how on earth are you supposed to try to nurture that relationship if you don't actually know what the other person really desires in that connection with you? And she was like, that's a really good point. And it was mirrored with Jacob. Like, he was like, I guess we're not mind readers. And it's like, you just nailed it, bud. Yeah. And so the more the two of you can engage and talk about how the relationship's landing, how it's nurtured, how it's growing, that the better your relationship will be, because this is a relationship for life. In this situation, yes, we're family, and very quickly in a non-family or non-romantic relationship, or even a romantic relationship, it's talking through these values and what you're seeking that can quickly identify expectations that are unreasonable from each other. And or either put yourselves in a situation where you actually realize there is misalignment and maybe the relationship isn't as potentially as promising for each other or as healthy as it could be, or you adapt your sails because you want to invest this time to grow together. And again, the mindset and the lifestyle elements here that help support an overall platform to grow and improve your nutrition and movement element is profound.
Yeah, and you each got to approach that relationship with your own lenses, and this is why we don't see what the other or read the minds of the others, because we're viewing that through our own individual lenses and from what we see in the relationship, not from what they feel and the other feels in the relationship. So it's, just taking that step back to have that communication, to understand their lens is essentially what we're doing here.
Yeah,
And
the language part you nailed, and it reminded me of some people we know that are going through a current sort of a marital challenge right now. And there was a really cool technique that the counsellor, because they're working both with us from the biochemical raw material, genetic hormone side, because again, if you can't get that balanced, like we've talked about in previous episodes around sleep and stress management, like that's the fundamentals. So if you've got none of that right with the foundations, then it's hard to think clearly, it's hard to live with design, it's hard to connect. So that's a no-brainer. So go back to those episodes to get the real foundations. But they're not only combining the diagnostics together as a relationship, as a couple, but also going to a counsellor. And so I was really impressed with how they managed this around. The counsellor gave each of them a pack of cards, and I guess on the cards it had various values or things that are really important to them. And the counsellors asked each of them independently, they weren't looking at what was going on with each other, to pull out like a couple of cards that really resonated with them, that seemed to have like very shared values of things that are super important to their lives. So they each pulled out a certain number of cards, and then they switched. They handed the other cards over, and then the goal of the other person looking at the spouse's cards was to raise any card that didn't make sense to them or felt like, oh, I didn't expect this particular value to be important to you. And so then once they went through all the cards, the counsellor then said, can you share what the other one is meaning? And so, yep, sure. The male was like, I saw you chose balance. I don't understand what that means. And then the wife said, balance to me means balance of work and family and play and engaging with my kids and then rest time and meaningful self-care and all this kind of thing. And he was like, I thought it meant you literally want to do yoga or be able to physically balance. And so herein lies a breakdown. Like whenever she's saying, I want better balance, he just has no clue what she's talking about. It's like, you might as well be talking, it's like, what are you mentioning? And likewise, for him, he chose community. To his partner, she felt community was like going to a art class or doing philanthropy time, donating time within a group of people or group environment. But to him, it meant connection to friends, to loved ones, to family unit, to feel a sense of belonging in his space. And again, just these two words, I know these are very innocuous words, community and balance, but if you've got a relationship in which those two words, there's a complete disconnect about what it means to the other person, then you're always going to have this complete brick wall when you're trying to communicate with your partner about what you actually need or value. So it makes sense now that we get back into the practical ways that people who are listening or watching can start to assess where these categories of mindset, lifestyle, nutrition, movement might be a bit squeaky. And we've alluded to the tailored life wheel before, which essentially segments up roughly around those four categories, but also double taps into certain sort of subcategories within those four. And what people can do is they can go to the show notes, and we've got a worksheet there that they can download. And there are instructions on the little worksheet, but at the end of the day, you've got these spokes of the wheel or segments, slices of the wheel, in which you can fill each of the, I interact between spokes of the wheel and buckets. So if you think of each of them kind of being buckets that are filled up a certain degree of how fulfilled you are in those areas. And so very quickly you can identify the areas that you don't necessarily feel like you've got a good repertoire of either coping mechanisms or lifestyle decisions or habits, behaviours that are potentially eroding that kind of path to a life by design. And then again, the exercise sheet will coach you through digging into each of those spokes that may be filled up less than others. And so that's a really good framework to even start assessing, okay, where do I even begin? And what does it look like to improve this? And equally, based on what you learn, feel free to message us, by the way. We'd love to see your life wheel. So please make sure to tag us, Tailored Life, #Tailored Life, or message us directly. And we can coach you on from there or to support you from the sidelines. But from there might be other episodes that we have that can double tap into those areas that can give you the practical advice to make those improvements. But again, one step at a time. Don't try to tackle all of those lower bucket spokes.
Yep. And again, coming back to that essential intent or that why that underpins all of that. because that's just going to fill up all those buckets if you're meeting that why, right?
So that's where we do recommend Essentialism. So we'll also put that in the show notes as an amazing book to read.
Also, Simon Sinek's Start With Why, I think is a pretty fundamental book.
Yep, there's some really good YouTube videos of him talking people through that as well.
Yeah, like his TED Talk, I think is one of the most watched TED Talks ever.
Yeah, deserving too.
Yeah, but it's just really fundamental to how we do it. I'm hoping people have watched this, if not already, but please watch that. But his book obviously double taps into it further, and he's got a series of other books beyond that as well.
Yep. So we roughly today covered the 4-pillar health philosophy that we have. We didn't double tap as much into nutrition and movement as we could have, but those are themselves their own sort of episodes.
And also, they're not the starting point as well, right?
True.
So we will build upon these things as we go through, and we wanted to emphasise the most time on mindset and lifestyle because they are the fundamental foundation that too many people, it's not sexy. People don't want to worry about it. They just want that stuff to happen, right? But we need to bring attention to that space and less attention on the nutrition and movement because that's where all the attention is focused in society.
To be frank, showing an Instagram reel of you meditating, you're not going to get a lot of attention to that. So all the influencers that you know, unless you're a part of a breathwork community, which of course is probably a lot of breathing going on, but majority of really popular videos are the people going hardcore on some type of movement, type of activity, or some type of diet, or some way of eating. So you don't see those mindset lifestyle practices because they are behind the show reel. They are the hard work where you show up for yourself in a way that has leveraging impact to those other sort of 2 areas. And so when it's not sexy, when it's in the quiet of your own home behind closed doors,
In your own mind,
it's hard to see people doing that, even though some of the most powerful people on this planet, the most successful people on this planet are all doing it. But again, it's probably one of the best kept, the worst kept secrets if you want to actually create a life by design, but the most powerful return on investment if you do that work that's internal and it's really focusing on that mindset lifestyle to support a vibrant path to well-being.
Yeah, and just keep in mind, it's not just the mindset and lifestyle of the current moment.
Yes.
There's a lot of the past trauma that also needs to be addressed because that's often imbuing a lot of the practices in ways in which you live your life and behaviours now.
And influencing all that programming.
Yeah.
We talked about in the last episode checking in. I got a bit emotional in that episode. And it's amazing the amount of work I've done to try to kind of untether the emotional element around being gaslit for so many years. And this is a work in progress. It's not like a light switch where once you figure out how to solve something, the light switch suddenly turns on and you're fine. This is a process.
It takes time.
It takes time, and it's worth it. This game called life is something that you have to play for life. And it is literally life or death if you don't play it well. It's something that's worth investing in. It's something that's worth being curious about. And if there's one thing you own that is probably the most valuable thing that you will ever own in your entire life, it is your mind and body. And too many people disregard it like a piece of trash that goes in the waste bin, that it's there to spend, it's there to expend, it's there to abuse. It's there to abuse. But the reality is it's the best investment you could possibly make.
Yep, 100%. So I guess to wrap this all up, we like to finish off with what is that, the one big key takeaway for you from this thing. So I'd like to throw the question to you first today.
Damn it! I always like to have some type of pause to think about it. Before you met me, I was already quite health conscious and very mindful of my decisions to improve things for me and improve things for my kids. And so the force multiplier for me, I suppose, was finding someone who was equally passionate about that, but also could help me learn and grow, and created a safe place for me to do that I felt understood and I could communicate with around that learning. And we'll probably never go into our original relationship origin story, but I remember in the car before we even hooked up, We were really good friends, and I always loved our conversations around health and well-being and unlocking potential, and we were so incredibly and radically aligned about so many things like that. And I did not think you were interested in me romantically at all, like 100% you're not interested. And so I said to you in that car ride, I said, I need your help with something as my friend. I said, I have big, scary, important feelings for you, and I know you don't feel the same way, but I need your help to get over you in that way. Because your friendship was more important to me than anything else, because I've found my person who I could actually talk to about things that I was really interested in, and I could grow and be a better person because of. And so to me, my take home from this is if you're interested in something or topic or whatever it might be, and you don't currently have someone in your sphere, your orbital, in your life that you can align and share those moments with or share that growth with, then you need to find more opportunities to find that person. Because whether that be joining a meetup group, whether that be, like we mentioned with the client, finding one new thing to do every month that you're interested in, and meeting more people that are aligned in a way, either in interests or like intellectual level or emotional connection, someone you can grow with together. I think that has such powerful implications to a life by design. And if you have someone already in your life that you think actually they're pretty well aligned, then talk more about your aspirations, talk more about how you want to grow, talk about what you're wanting in a friend or a partner and how you want to be able to be a better version of yourself. And be vulnerable. It's okay to be vulnerable because that's how you grow. A lobster or a crustacean literally can't grow unless it sheds its old shell because it physically stops it from growing. And so in that moment of vulnerability of trying to find your little tribe, or you're trying to find a community that helps you grow, you've got to find a way to open up a little bit of that gap. And so I think my take-home message, and I know that was a long little spiel there, is I think having the right lifestyle partners, whether it be friends, family, life partner, whatever it is, has profound impact on the mindset. Because again, it's the chicken or the egg, it's the cycle. And if you can break through with the right people some of that thinking process, those negative narratives, the people that love you call you out for the words you use to bring yourself down or cut yourself down, I think finding those people is a critical part in creating a life by design.
Well, you are a makeup of the 5 people we spend most time with, right? And I think that just sums it up right there. And yeah, I think that's absolutely a beautiful take-home point. So for on the spot, nicely done. Like, and for me, like, it's something where I want to go with it is, because I've stated it so much throughout this podcast, this episode in particular, is that 95% of our life is autonomous. That is just an absurd amount of just habitual patterns that are in place that can be just either serving you or hurting you. You need to become the observer of what these behaviors are and set that life by design. And by picking that one thing, as again, I've said that multiple times, picking that one thing, but you need to start being curious about your life and the behaviors in which you do so you can start creating that life by design.
And what do they say is that, how do you eat an elephant? One piece at a time?
Yeah, 1% a day.
What is that? It sounds really horrible saying eating an elephant.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if your life is this big thing, this thing that feels insurmountable, I'll say it again, reiterate what you said, it happens by taking one bite at it, one small bite, one chip away, and working on that. And then once you've refined and polished that and created a new pathway of behavior and paradigm around that one thing, then you can take on another bite. But you can't tackle this big thing called life by doing it all at the same time, because that's setting yourself up for oftentimes failure and disappointment and disillusionment.
And the best thing is, if you look back on your life in 2 years, you'd be like, whoa, I can't believe what has transpired over the last 2 years. Just by adding one thing on top of the other, and your life will look different, completely different. And as a result of that, you are a makeup of your behaviors. At the end of the day, over that year or two, you're going to be a completely different person to who you were, just by doing one thing on top of the other or taking those small bites.
Yeah, and there was a great quote, actually. One of my reels got like 14,000 views recently, which blew my mind. But there was the 3 simple rules of life, which I really loved. And one of the last ones was of the effect of, if you don't want to stay in the same place, then you need to take at least one step. Again, all it takes is one thing, one small step, one new way of approaching your life in a more intentional way, and sticking with that little one thing that can be the change and the force multiplier for the rest of your life.
Yeah, so I hope people use the 4-pillar framework to identify what is their priority structure that they should be focusing on, and picking one thing in that area to focus on.
Yeah, and if you need help, you know where to find us. And we can't wait to hear about how people are hopefully taking little tidbits of what we share here to create a life by design, and equally find a path to vibrant well-being, less lonely and confusing.
Beautiful.
Cool. Nice. We hope you enjoyed this episode. We are so grateful for you being here. We want to help make the path to vibrant well-being less lonely and confusing, so please let us know how we can do that better. Like, subscribe and share with your loved ones who you think could benefit from these topics, because that raises the bar for everyone.